Good things continue to happen here at Hampton, and we want to announce the placing of membership. Got William and Marisha Cup. Sit over here. Here's Marisha. Known Marisha and the family for, at least 30 years or so, or more than that. William and I used to, whenever Jessica was in kindergarten, and William and I would be the only two guys waiting to pick up the kindergarten people, and so we got to kind of talk with one another there. All the rest were women there picking up the kids, and so we kind of hung out a little bit together there. And then we have the Stringers, Mark and Holly Stringer, and their 4 kids sit back here in the back. Known Holly most of all her life. So she used to come over when we were in Atlanta. She'd come over to our house, or Jessica would go over her house nearly every Sunday. And we're just tickled to have y'all here. And they've been attending for some time. So many of you know them already, but we're glad to have them officially say, we want to make Hampton our church home. And we want to welcome you and just encourage one another to go to heaven. And that's what we're here for. We're talking about our gospel meeting coming up April 20 through 22nd. We have some area speakers. We have John McCormick. John McCormick is currently preaching in Atlanta. He's been there for a couple of years. A good person. I think you will really enjoy his sermons. He's new to the area, but just doing a wonderful work there in Atlanta. Then we have Buddy Ray. Buddy Ray has been around the area all his life, raised in Arkansas. He's been over at DeKalb. He's preaching now. He's been a coach for years and years. But now he is preaching at the church at DeKalb. He's been there for a couple of years in the capacity of preaching there. He's doing a wonderful job. I think you'll really enjoy him. He's preaching Saturday night, April 21st. Our topic is, just preach your favorite sermon. He said, Jerry, you've already heard my favorite sermon. I said, it's good. Preach it again. And so you will really enjoy this. I will enjoy hearing it for the second time. But Saturday night, April 21st, Buddy Ray's favorite sermon. It's a good one. Tom Hooten. Of course, I've known Tom most of my life, especially since I was a teenager and such. He's been preached in Atlanta for years and years, and now retired. He retired and preached at Stamps, filling in till they found someone for 12 years. And then he finally said, I've got to retire. But Tom Hooten, count him a near and dear friend. Steve Williams preaches at Atlanta Street. He's been there, I guess, 18, 19, or 20 years in Atlanta Street. And so he is not new to the area, but he'll do a wonderful, wonderful job. Looking forward to hearing him Sunday night. And so these are our gospel meeting speakers that we're having. Some around the area, some you may not have heard, even though they've been here a long time. And so I got to thinking about, who wants to come to a gospel meeting? And as I was thinking about that, I thought about the church and the newness of the church. And Acts chapter 2 comes to mind, and that was read for our scripture. And just turn to Acts chapter 2, and if you would, verses 42 through 47, and just have that in mind as we read through this. I'll make mention of it several times as we talk about who wants to come to a gospel meeting. Does this interest anyone? And so when we're talking about Acts 2 and the church beginning, in Acts chapter 2, Peter preaches on the day of Pentecost. He's full of enthusiasm because he's telling them about Jesus and the cross and telling about the sacrifice Jesus made and who Jesus was, how he was prophesied in the Old Testament, how he fulfilled that prophecy, how he has come to save their souls. And 3,000 respond. I cannot imagine preaching a sermon and 3,000 respond. I get excited when 3 respond, right? We're excited about that. 3,000 respond. It's a wonderful day, glorious day, a day of enthusiasm, a day that just continued that momentum throughout the next several years, in fact. Who wants to hear a gospel sermon? Number 1. And I don't have 1, 2, 3 on the slides. I just want to have this picture on your mind. Remember, we're having a gospel meeting April 20th. Who's going to come? Who's interested in hearing the gospel? Acts chapter 2, verse 36 and following. those who are, number one, converted. Those who are interested in spiritual things. Out of the multitude, I don't know how many were there in the multitude, but not everyone wanted to hear about Jesus. Some rejected the word. Some wouldn't respond. When we talk about 3,000 responding, that's not everybody that heard about Jesus. But some heard, and some were excited, and some said, I want to change my life. I am interested in Jesus. I am interested in the gospel. You know, what are you interested in? If someone were to come to say to you, listen, I want to invite you to... Julie and I have this weekend been watching the golf tournament, the Masters tournament, on television. If someone were to go to say to me, Jerry, I've got tickets to the Masters tournament. They're in Georgia. Would you be interested in going? Yes, I would. Yes. To go to the Masters? I don't know if you can get tickets to that. You got to know someone. I don't know what it costs or whatever. Yeah, I would be interested. There are thousands and thousands of people lined up just to watch some guy hit a ball. Thousands are interested in that. I'm one of them. I would be there. I'm not there, but I'm watching it. We're recording it on television. I would love to go. Let me say that. I would love to go if anyone has an extra ticket next year. That just putting that plug in there. Oh, and the NCAA basketball tournament was last weekend. I didn't go to it either. But if someone were to say, listen, I've got tickets to the Final Four. I've got tickets to the tournament championship. I just watch it on TV. But if someone were to say, would you like to go? Yes, I want to go. I'm there for it. Julie said to me the other day, we were in Dallas. She said, I want to go to Sam Moon's. You know what that is? I said, what? I don't care for going to that. What is that? Oh, it's a place you go shopping. You can get a lot of good deals on that. You can look for purses, accessory and jewelry. I don't want to go to that. But I went. Yeah. Me and a whole bunch of other women were there. Anyway. I went. Julie's in nursery right now. I can talk about her. I wasn't excited about going. It wasn't what I wanted to do there in Dallas, but I went. You know what I've never done? I've never been at trade days at Canton. I know a lot of people, thousands of people go. I've been invited. I don't know. I'll go to yard sales out around Texarkana. I don't care about the Canton trade days. I may go one of these days, just like I went to Sam Moon. But one of these days I may go. But if someone were to say, Jerry, we're going to Canton this weekend, or whatever weekend it is they have it. Second weekends, is that it? Okay, that's you. But I don't know if someone were to say we're going. Boy, I may or may not be interested in going. There's some things you want to do. You're excited about doing. Who wants to go to a gospel meeting? Those who are interested in spiritual things. In Colossians chapter 3, verse 1, if you then been risen with Christ, he's talking about those who have been baptized, those who have been risen from that watery grave of baptism. If you've been risen with Christ, raised with him, seek those things which are above. Spiritual things that he's talking about. Don't set your affection on worldly things. He's talking about golf, and he's talking about basketball, and he's talking about the trade days, and he's setting our affections on worldly things. What I love to do. What do you love to do? Do you love to hear the gospel preached? We're going to have it preached. Is that what you love to do? Is that what you desire to do? Is that what interests you? If so, you'll be here. That you'll invite others. This is what I'm concerned about. This is what I live for. This is what I am converted. I like to hear about Jesus. I like to hear about the cross. I like to hear about salvation. I like to hear of God's grace and mercy and love. I want to go to heaven. And so they were converted. 3,000 were added. 3,000. And once they were converted, then they were constant. Look at the next verse. After 3,000 were added, and they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine, and of fellowship, and of breaking of bread, and in prayers. They were constant. They continued steadfastly. It's not that they just became Christians and said, I want to be saved, and I'm one of the 3,000. I give my life to Jesus, and then you'll never see me again. They were constant. Elders, can you imagine someone becoming a Christian and they say, what can I do for the church? Ah, those are the ones you want, right? Those are the ones you're excited about. What can I do? How can I be involved? How can I be constant? So many times it is that the church is just a revolving door. We bring some in and we lose some out the back door. Those that make a decision to say, I want to be part of this church. Peter, tell me more about it. What can I do? They continued steadfastly. Steadfastly. Well, that seed was planted in their heart. It wasn't just planted. It was fertilized. It was watered. It brought forth fruit. They were excited about becoming Christians. They were involved, continued steadfastly in four things. The apostles' doctrine. That's teaching the truth. Doctrine. Church. The church is nothing more than a social club without doctrine. Now, we can be involved in a lot of things, and we are involved in a lot of things, but what separates us from civic clubs and social clubs is the doctrine. They continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine. What is that? That's teaching about Jesus and what Jesus taught. We got to put Jesus first and what he taught. Doctrine. Continue steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine. That's the Bible. This is what we live by, right? This is our when we talk about living a Christian life, we talk about doing the things that are in the Bible. We talk about living what is here. We separate ourselves from the world because we have doctrine. We have the Bible. This is our guide. This is what we walk by. This is what we read and we study and we meditate upon. They continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine. What about you? Are you interested in the Bible? Do you read the Bible? Do you continue steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine? Continue steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine. And in fellowship. You know, the Bible gives 3 examples or more, but I'm going to use 3, of fellowship. One is family. Whenever we talk about the church and we talk about, we're part of 3,000, we're part of 3,000 what? We're part of 3,000 family. You're all children of God, Galatians 3, verse 26 and 27. Children, brothers and sisters, we're family. I like family. Don't you? You like spending time with family? I love it. I love my physical family. I love my spiritual family. I read one time about a person asking a preacher, said, Preacher, can you go to heaven without going to church? And the preacher responded and said, why would you want to? You think about who's going to be in heaven but the church. You don't like spending time with the church here, you're not going to spend time spending eternity with the church in heaven. We're family. Like family, sometimes we don't always get along. We fuss and fight. Just like me and my brothers and sisters growing up, yeah. We didn't always get along. love one another. We're family. He used another word to describe the church also, fellowship. And the word is flock. We're sheep. Can you imagine a sheep saying, listen, I don't need the rest of the flock. I can stand on my own. I don't need a shepherd to watch after me. Those wolves, those bears, well, there's nothing. I'm not scared of them. I can find my own grass. I can find my own stream. I can protect my own self. I don't need the protection of anyone else. I'm a fierce sheep, right? No, sheep. Sheep need protection. Sheep are helpless. Sheep need a shepherd. We need one another. We do. Whenever we talk about fellowship, we talk about a flock, and we need one another as a flock being together and caring for one another and protecting one another. Another word used is a soldier. Onward Christian soldiers. That's us. Can you imagine a soldier going in, enlisting in the army and saying, listen, Sergeant, I know you've got a nice company of men. I know there's 1,000 over here, but listen, I don't need y'all. When I go fight the enemy, I'll stand on my own fighting the enemy. I don't need you. I don't need to be in no. Listen, if I'm going to go fight the enemy, I'm going to be right behind a tank or something. You know, I'm going to get all the protection I can get. I'm going to be with just as many as possible surrounding me, saying, listen, we will capture the enemy together. We can do it together. Can you imagine a soldier going out and saying, hey, listen, I don't need the rest of the Army, Navy, Marines, or whatever. I don't need y'all. I'll stand on my own 2 feet. No, what does a soldier do? You fight together. You learn together. You train together. You're one, and you need to be one. When we talk about fellowship, we're talking about family. We're talking about flock. We're talking about soldier. We need one another. We need fellowship. We're just not talking about having the potluck. That's not the limit of fellowship. Oh, I like potluck. Now, don't get me wrong on that. I like potluck day. We need fellowship with one another. Cannot live the Christian life without it. And then he talks about apostles' doctrine and fellowship and breaking of bread. That's the Lord's Supper. To remember the cross. To keep first things first. We center around the sacrifice of Jesus, the love of Jesus, the mercy of Jesus. And we put that first and foremost. And we continue every time that we meet on the first day, we remember why we're here. This is my body as we take of the bread. This is my blood, which is shed for remission of sins. His blood, his body, his love. They continued steadfastly in the breaking of bread. Breaking of bread is used as the Lord's Supper, and it's also used as a common meal. Just a little bit later in some other verses, we'll use it as a partaking of a common meal. But right now we use it, it's the Lord's Supper. And they continued steadfastly in prayer. Persistent in prayer. How's your prayer life? How often do you talk to God? Are you comfortable talking with God in prayer? They continued steadfastly in apostles' doctrine and fellowship and in breaking of bread and in prayer. So they were converted. That's who's interested in attending a gospel meeting, who wants to hear the gospel of Jesus. They were constant, consistent, persistent, steadfast. That's who wants to hear a gospel sermon. And number 3, they were countless. It says the same day they were added 3,000 souls. And then they were countless because it says that praising God and having favor with all the people, and the Lord added daily. Added to the church daily. How many? I don't know. Can we imagine adding to the church daily? Let me read a couple of verses. Acts 1, verse 15. And in those days, Peter stood up in the midst of the disciples and said, and the number of the names together were about 120, Acts 1:15. Acts 2, verse 41. They that gladly received his word were baptized. The same day there were added about 3,000 souls. Acts 4, verse 4. Howbeit, many of them, when they heard the word, believed. And the number of the men was about 5,000. And the word increased, Acts 6, verse 7. And the number of disciples multiplied in Jerusalem greatly. And a great company of priests were obedient to the faith. They were numbered about 120, 3,000, 5,000, counting the men. Acts 6, verse 7, and the number of disciples multiplied. When we get excited about hearing the Word of God, when we get others excited, when we truly become converted, when we truly become constant, we become countless. Well, I'm excited. I'm excited that we're having a gospel meeting. Just a little interjection of excitement and truth and perseverance, a little shot in the arm to keep us keeping on. It'll be a Friday night, Saturday night, all day Sunday. Are you interested? Continue to keep the meeting in your prayers. Continue inviting people. Continue to mark aside your calendar and say that I will be here. This is important to me. Our gospel meeting. I thought that showing that illustration there in the first century of how they became Christians and how they were converted, how they were excited. If someone was going to preach the gospel there in Jerusalem in that first century, they would be there. What about us? Have we let the cares of this world, distractions of this world, keep us from keeping first things first? First things. First things first. If you're not a Christian, oh, what a time to become a Christian. Maybe it is someone's been thinking about it for some time, studying, talking with others about it. To put first things first. When we sing the invitation song to say, I want to become a Christian. I want to be converted. Oh, there's no better time than right now. Won't you come right now while we stand?